Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato. Come back. Samma sambuddhassa. So one question. Dear Luangpor, you had a wonderfully close relationship with your mom. How did you practice non-attachment to her when she was alive? Well, it's a timely question because if mom were alive, she'd be 106 years old tomorrow. So there you go. She was born in Tsarist Russia, she was born in Tallinn actually, which is now Estonia. Her brother had her uncle had a big kind of industrial farm there. So she was actually born in Tsarist Russia. And my grandfather was in the Tsarist cavalry. Amazing, isn't it? And then his father was one of the first indigenous Latvians to get tertiary education because Latvia was run by the Baltic Germans, and the Baltic Germans had a history of about 400 years in Latvia. So even though Tsarist Russia dominant was the power that sort of owned the Baltics, the Baltic Germans who had come in, it's a long history, 400 years before, were the kind of administrators and aristocrats. And the indigenous Latvians were just the farming serfs. So they only got there. Well, I said my grandfather's father, yes, he was one of the first to get tertiary education, which is like university education. And he became a Lutheran minister in the Lutheran church. And then his son, I get this right. Then his son, my grandfather's brother, was a bishop in the Lutheran church in Latvia. And then I walked with Nick Scott. We did a trip from Warsaw to St. Petersburg, taking local transport and doing some backpacking. So we backpacked through Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania for about 3 weeks. And at that time I went to Liepaja, I think. And I went to the church where my grandfather's brother was the bishop. And there was a picture of him. He's a lovely man. And the minister there, the Lutheran minister, welcomed me. It was really cool. A kind of interesting thing to do. But anyway, back to the question. What was the question? So, right. Well, I was thinking about that. What would non-attachment look like? And what came to me was that non-attachment should look like the Brahma Viharas. That's what it seems to me. So it seems to me that when the heart is free, then the Brahma Viharas should flow according to circumstance. So as I always say, to me, the Brahma Viharas are one package. Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha. So loving kindness, compassion, joy, peace. And to me, they're not really separate entities. They're all a function of a heart which is available to life and which responds from love. And it's not, and if you see when the heart is contracted by aversion, say, then it's alienated, right? There's separation. Whereas metta, karuna, there's no separation. There is physically, yeah, but there isn't that sense of, I'm here and you're there. It's kind of more sense of a union. So then, like with my mother, I had no issues. We were great friends. So I didn't have any kind of baggage left over. I know a lot of people do, because family life sometimes can be dysfunctional or whatever. So that can be attachment that people can have, just unresolved issues. So apparently this happens a lot in North America. When Christmas comes, everyone gets together, and although it can be joyous, all the unresolved garbage comes out too. So, oh, I survived another Christmas. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's very, very beautiful. But you could see how, let's say, if two siblings they only see each other once a year, and they kind of took off from home at the age of 20, went to college somewhere, got a job somewhere, got married, and only came together once a year, it's bound to be triggers pressed, which are based on their adolescence. So what comes up is, in a 40-year-old mind, comes up a 15-year-old, the emotions of a 15-year-old. Right? So if big brother dominates little brother, and little brother actually is the CEO of a company, and big brother is still dominating, little brother acts like little brother. You can't do that to me. And it's embarrassing, but it's real. It is real. And that's the vipaka karma, what we call kind of unresolved karma. So if you have that, like Chinese New Year or something like that, and it happens, realize, oh, I see, that's just vipaka karma. So that's one thing. But I had none of that with my mom, fortunately. I did with my brother. And I won't talk about that. You only see the good side of me. But with my mom, so to me, I was thinking about that. It might be a nice way to look at non-grasping or non-attachment. Because sometimes non-attachment sounds so very dry, doesn't it? Non-attachment, dead. But we are beings that have love, we have hearts, we have emotions, we are alive. So maybe that's one way to look at it, that non-attachment is the free flow of the Brahma Viharas. And in the Brahma Viharas, again, they arise according to circumstance. So as I always joke, if someone comes here and trips and breaks their leg, you don't have mudita. Do you say, oh, wonderful, I have joy? Yeah, it's absurd. You have karuna, right? So it arises. So they're not really, I think, like four separate things. They're part of one possibility which manifests in these different ways. So then with my mother, upekkha was the obvious difficult one, because I worried about her. And her pain was painful to me, which is empathy, but her pain also worried me. And that's what I had to work with. And it was because it was really a beautiful thing to do, to care for her for those years, because it was just constantly Brahma Viharas, even in the exhaustion. It was great. It was really great. And one of the two best things I've done in my life is become a monk and take care of Mom, by far, obviously. So I'm grateful that she lived. She lived to 93. I didn't rush in there when she was 55, right? I really lived a full life. So fortunately, she had a long life. So with upekkha, I could see that I would, I'd see her in pain because she had osteoporosis and then hence osteoarthritis and macular degeneration and, blah, blah, blah. At 93, it doesn't look good. But she had a good mind. She had a bright mind. But some days you could see, okay, she's kind of going through it. And then she tried to hide it from me because she didn't want me to worry. And then I would hide it from her because I didn't want her to worry that I was worried that she was worried, that kind of thing. It's like two people. And then I saw, no, you're not helping her by worrying about her. That's not really helpful. And worrying isn't karuna, is it? Karuna is not worrying. It's so the karuna was there in terms of really, I was really in touch with her. And then I just started to think, yeah, but old people, this is what happens when you're old. You can't not feel tired and exhausted and not have pain. And so I was able to kind of see what upekkha was. That upekkha was a combination of well, in the Brahma Viharas, it was both karuna and acceptance. This is her karma. She has to bear with it, and she's certainly brave enough. She has no problem bearing with it. And that was a really important lesson, very, very realistic and practical lesson on how Brahma Viharas work. So you might think of that, when you think about non-attachment, why don't you, put that into the equation, the Brahma Viharas? Because again, non-attachment sounds terribly dry, doesn't it? Kind of like, what does it mean? We're still feeling beings. And then when Mom died, I've told the story 1,000,001 times, but I asked my brother not to wait on the undertakers. So, and it was March, and I turned off the heat in her room, and I think 36 hours I waited, and I would just go into the room and sit and meditate. I was really exhausted. It was I was really tired. So, but I wanted to really fully witness just what I would feel and so on. And then after 36 hours, because I was organizing the funeral too and doing stuff, and my brother was doing stuff, but after 36 hours, okay, that's enough. So then I phoned my brother, and he got the undertakers, and they took her away. And then there was the funeral, and then then the next day, the funeral directors took the body to the crematorium. I followed, and then Mom was just on a pallet, really, because they take the coffin away when they put it in the ovens. And then I did some chanting. She was lying there with a shroud, and then I walked her to the ovens, and I pushed it in. I pressed the red button, and whoosh, it just took off as gas, and then watched it for a while. And then I was confused for 3 months. My mind was just a total, he wouldn't want to talk to me then. And because I'd been at it for 9 years, like living with her in full on. So I was confused for about 3 months, all kinds of weird emotions. But I kind of knew that it's not going to be normal. If you take, if you're so intensely involved in something, all of a sudden it ends. You're going to have some kind of effect. So I kind of knew, but I didn't know what. And of course, it confused, because as soon as Mom died, my brother said, "Okay, I'll take care of the rest. You go back to the monastery." I was gone as quick as I could. And then I had a kuti, and I didn't have much responsibility. I think I confused the other monks, because I'm usually pretty jolly, but I was not jolly. I was in some kind of inverted, but I didn't have a problem with that. It was just natural kind of result, nervous system. And then after 3 months, then it kind of just lifted. I had a couple of dreams, which were very, very powerful. And then it just lifted. And then it was good. So yeah, it was, but in thinking about that this morning, I thought that's a good way to look at non-attachment. Much more positive for me, the flow of the Brahma Viharas. So tomorrow, Mom's 106th birthday. Bring the cakes on. This was significant. Since the world we live in is time-based, how can we ever understand akalika Dhamma, that which is beyond time? And this came up in the interviews. And by and by, I really enjoyed talking with all of you, or listening, I hope, because I do learn a lot from people's answers and questions, because we're all different. And quite often I don't know what I'm talking about. It's just, someone asked me a question and I don't know. And I just sort of intuitively see, I just kind of intuitively try things. And then if it starts to connect, then I get some kind of dialogue going. So it's an interesting process. But in the interviews, what came up several times is to remember that there are two streams of the teaching, and one is about time, and the other is akalika Dhamma. And the part that's about time is about, say, for a monk, Vinaya, and it's about self and it's about time. So this body and these robes and my rules are in time. I am a bhikkhu. That's when I use the word I am a bhikkhu. I was born in 1947 and I live in Canada and I've got a lovely kuti here and I don't have good teeth. And so on and so forth. The sense of I and the teeth that I inherited from this body are old. And my body's old, and my knees are old, and and I like canoeing, and I like woodwork, and that's all based in time, right? And that's true. That is true. And the teachings of anatta have to be in line with that. There is a time-bound experience, for sure. Well, it's a bit silly. And that's where the teaching speaks about sila and dana and social responsibility and relationship to mother and father and the aging of the body. So in those teachings you have, I am the owner of my kamma, heir to my kamma, born of my kamma, whatever kamma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. I am of the nature to age. I am of the nature to sicken. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. So we have all that there. And if you've pondered that, you think, well, that's a contradiction, or at least a paradox. What do you mean? Anatta, and I am of the nature to die. Come on, which one is it? But it is both. It's both, because there is individuality, and there's the individual experience that we're all having right now, and it's different. It's individual. So say like this evening, I feel tired, right? And that's a pretty natural result of talking and relating for 2 days. And then and that's time bound, that's conditioned by time and by just the way it is. But also there's the knowing of tiredness. And the knowing of tiredness doesn't have a quality. Knowing doesn't decay, does it? Knowing doesn't have bad teeth. That's good. Yeah. It's just knowing. It's just puru. It's just consciousness. It's just awareness. And that has no quality. It knows qualities. So the knowing tomorrow will know a body which is more refreshed, in mind states which are more refreshed, and they are in time, and they are individuality, and that's what I experience. You experience your, and yet the knowing will not be different tomorrow morning, right? And then tomorrow afternoon, and so on and so forth. And that's akalika Dhamma, that very, very knowing. And it's so ordinary, we miss it. We try to say, well, where is it? Well, where is it not? You could ask yourself that. When is consciousness not, or when is presence not? It's always there. And the presentation that I try to do with the Dharma is just to say that kind of to place more emphasis on awareness rather than the objects of awareness. And sometimes I know I give these fancy questions, and then sometimes I can be confusing. So if you go back to Luangpor Sumedho's simple statements like this, and it's not about the this, it's about the silence of knowing. So yeah, I can, like I was just contemplating that just feeling like tired. It's just tired. It's very natural. But so is the puru, so is the knowing. And if you don't have the refuge in knowing or presence, or it's like this. Then, of course, tiredness creates the causes for thought. And if you're not skillful, then then it can create the causes for complaining or feeling sorry for yourself or all the rest of it. But actually, it's just tiredness. It's neither good nor bad. Well, obviously, if I had COVID and I couldn't breathe, I might, but I'd still be trying to do the same thing, wouldn't I? Still try to abide as the knowing, as the witness. Like in Thailand, like I remember we'd get we had a time where scrub typhus was endemic. I think about 10% of the monastery had it. I had it, and several of the monks that I knew, and that was very exhausting. And I was in hospital. I lost a lot of weight, and so on. And just the awareness of sickness. It was interesting what my mind presented when I was sick. I wanted my mother to give me grapes. It was, it was a 4-year-old kid with sickness as condition. There was this little child. Oh, Mom, give me some grapes, please. But I could know that. I could see that. That's just the sanya. That's just the perception that comes. But the knowing wasn't. Is the knowing sick? Does the knowing ever have a toothache? Does the knowing ever feel tired? No, it just is. That's why it's so ineffable, because it has no quality. It doesn't decay. It isn't born, doesn't die. All that language, and that's what we're seeing within the time-bound conditions, which we can't ignore them. You can't just ignore your body, or you can't ignore tiredness, or you have to take care of the body. That's part of our duty. But that's not all there is. You imagine if you think that, like, let's say, like that model that had the kind of a disastrous facelift. I forget. I don't know. I just saw it in BBC, but something. So this poor thing, she's always been glamorous and glamorous and glamorous, and now she looks like a turtle, or something like that. And her whole identity is the body. I mean, what a disaster to identify with the body. And now, she has to hide away. She can't go outside. Self-conscious, fearful, lawsuits. What a trap to identify with the body. Or your intellect. Like, a lot of us think about what happens with Alzheimer's. And I wonder, I don't know. I don't know how that works. But I know, like, just the loss of memory, that's pretty easy to deal with, right? What's your name? I don't know. Forget. So that's pretty easy because it's not dysfunctional. Perception isn't kind of warped. But what happens when perception gets warped? I don't know. I really don't. We ask ourselves a lot, like, what happens with awareness there? But we'll see. If it happens, it happens. But the more you can see that it's not just your emotions and your body and your memories. It is this awareness that's always there. And that's what we're trying to point to. That's the liberation of the heart. So in terms of time-bound conditions, you have to do that well. You have to do right livelihood, right? Otherwise, you're going to have disaster. You have to take care of the body. So as a bhikkhu, we have the Vinaya, which is a fabulous right livelihood. It really is. But we have to do it well. You have to do it well. And then that becomes the way you live your life, the way you live your life. And if you live your life well, then there's more opportunity for contemplating the knowing and being the knowing. If you don't live your life well, the conditions of samsara just overwhelm you. And if you don't have the good fortune of a peaceful environment, and then of course you're in war or you're starving, go on, it's hard. That's why we need to stop wars. and feed people or whatever. So we're fortunate. We're fortunate. We're very, very fortunate in that way. Let's see what else we have. Trying to find an easy one. Lazy. Where's the good one? Well, okay, the usual. Dear Luangpor, I find it relatively easy to rest in awareness and to access the sound of silence in meditation and pockets of space throughout the day. However, I find it hard to bring this peace into the daily interactions of situations that require decisions, where emotions arise through interactions with others. How do I bridge this gap? Well, welcome to all of us. So we're all faced with that dilemma. And I think if you put a more positive spin on it and say that the complexity of life when it triggers kilesa and defilements does have a kind of opportunity in it. And the opportunity, you might say, is purification. When, say, for example, my continual example of giving public talks. Now, that interaction produced fear. So I could say to myself, well, if I just stayed in my kuti and did walking meditation and sitting and walking and sitting, I wonder if I would have worked out that fear. I wonder if I would have just been actually afraid to go out. I might have ended up some kind of weird hermit. Maybe not. But as it turned out, Luangpor Sumedho pushed me. And then that interaction was confusing. It produced emotional material. But I did have a chance to go back to my kuti and contemplate that. But the result was that the social situation pressed the buttons of fear. And so fear came up. And fear, we have this word anusaya, a latent tendency. It was there. It had the potential to come up. I wasn't free. Just because I'm in my kuti, I'm not feeling fear. That doesn't mean I'm afraid. I was more, so anyway, so the thing gets triggered off. And then is that, again, as I was saying, is that a bad thing? It is a bad thing if I can't be aware of it. It is a bad thing if it gets worse and I get overwhelmed by it and I get burnt out by it. So that's one of the criteria for looking at lifestyle, livelihood, is do these interactions that kind of disturb your peace of your mind, are they overwhelming? Do they get worse? Or in your awareness of them, do you develop more barami of patience, a stronger awareness, more wisdom, more insight? Then actually they are strengthening, because we do need adversity. If we don't have some friction, if we don't have some adversity, I don't think we get any strength. So these things can. Having said that, they can also be overwhelming. You can also have so much adversity that you have a nervous breakdown or you burn out. So it's not like all or nothing. So to this person's question, and to all of us have the same question, I would say the most productive thing of having enough mindfulness in your daily life to actually process the kilesa and begin to see their cessation is a strong morning practice. Well, first of all, a good sila, at least, right? And some heartfelt activity of generosity in your life. That's very important. If you don't have avenues of expression, of joyous expression of giving, you can really dry up in this. Like Luangpor Sumedho says, it's like brain surgery without anesthesia. So looking in your mind. So some kind of outward expression and relating with love and philanthropy and giving combined with sila, I think is very, very important. But then having said that, then I think morning practice, really like a serious hour, not just like, the joke I tell is like, you come away from the retreat, you make an adhitthana. Every morning, I'm going to do 2 hours. In the evening, I'm going to do 1 hour. I'm just going to really go for it. So you do that for a day. And you think, that was a bit much. So the next day, 45 minutes in the morning, Netflix in the evening. Day 4, you almost get up, but you say, maybe tomorrow. Day 5, you wave to the Buddha and go to work. That's it for your adhitthana. So that's not a serious practice. So can you develop, and many of you do, I know that. I think the chunk in the morning before the world gets up can be very fruitful. You really set up, you see what your mind has been doing in the day before, the moods of the mind, which they might be worrying or might be resentful. Oh, okay, that's what consciousness is doing now. It's moving towards these negative states. The ego is being created through worry or through whatever it might be. So you kind of warned yourself, right? You kind of ready, okay. And you don't believe in it. You see, okay, that's what my mind wants to do, but you do your meditation and you put it down. You really do put it down. And then and you probably, most of us have some kind of theme that we're working on. I find I am. It might be in relationship to others, it might be around right speech. Oh, it might be you're trying to develop some parami. That's quite good. You're kind of bringing in a bit of a program into your inner life as you live your outer life. So it might be just being more patient at a committee meeting, or not being so sharp with your language, something. And you make kind of determinations to do that. So then your day tends to be more mindful, right? Evening practice is more difficult, admittedly. You're just so like, if you really had a full-on job with lots of responsibilities, you just want to veg out. Everyone knows what veg out means? Netflix. You just want to sit in front and just, So, I mean, I understand that. That's why retreats are very, very good. I would say also, like, ways of developing body awareness, either yoga, tai chi, qigong, working out, jogging, playing badminton, anything really, to get more embodied, because so much of our work is like in front of computers, and it's in thought, it's in ideation, it's in analysis, it's in looking at a computer screen so much. So if you're doing like really physical things, like taking a swim in Pike Lake in November, what was the temperature of the water? I forget. Well, one of our monks is doing what's called Wim Hof. It's a kind of breathing technique to develop inner heat. It's based on the practices of Tummo. In Tibetan Buddhism, practices of Tummo are developing psychic heat from inside. And there's a kind of breathing technique in cold showers. So one of our monks is doing this adhitthana every day. He'd go swimming in the lake. It's fine when it's August, but in November, it was serious cold. So Yom Vibun joined him one afternoon. I didn't. I like hot showers. But for this monk, and he's doing it, he's getting a lot of vitality and getting in touch with his breathing. So he's got more awareness of the body. I mean, that's a kind of extreme thing, but Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga or anything like that, where you really are more embodied, I think it's very good in our modern culture. Not just to stay in shape. I mean, that's okay. It's more than that. It's that you spend some time with your body rather than just with your head. Hi, body, how are you doing? And if you can, I would say also, like I noticed some people have pain and do yoga postures, like open up open up the thighs, and really develop some good postures that way. And then you have to think about right livelihood, the job you have, right? The family you have. There's not much you can do about that. But if you have a chance, and like if you ever get a chance to change your job, oftentimes you don't, you try to create a situation where there's more awareness, more space, and less toxic environment if you're in a toxic environment. Those are very personal things. But I think the major thing is a good strong practice in the morning, and then retreats. Yeah. But it's everyone's question. Everyone's question is the same that way. On using the body as object during guided meditation, when it comes to the part of feel inside the ear canal, I could only imagine a picture of ear canals. Is it that how it's done through imagination? I somehow feel it's not. Yeah, I just kind of play around with those spaces, inner spaces, but it's basically, if there's nothing there, just feel nothing. That's all. It is kind of keeping track, staying in the present moment. That's all. That's really, it's not really like in an anatomical lesson. You can do that. You can, like I know doctors, they will actually, because they have a strong visualization of bodily parts, they'll actually visualize, and they'll hold their attention on the liver or the pancreas or things like that. And this just dwell with attention on that. That would calm the mind. But actually with the body meditation, what I'm just trying to encourage is this idea of let something come into consciousness. That's my major idea, because I think that's very healing. So if I say, the architecture of your outer ears and so on, just let whatever is there to come into consciousness. So if it's nothing, it's nothing. And then around places of like strain, like someone was talking about tension in the jaw, right? So you just go to that and let it come into consciousness. Or like if I go for a hike in the monastery and I've been walking for an hour or something like that, then I'll go back and do yoga nidra if I have the time or the situation allows. And then because I'm older and I'm kind of out of shape, not totally out of shape, but not in great shape, my muscles are maybe used to it. And then I just lie there and I just let it's not really pain, the tightness sort of just come out of my body. They're very good for the body. So that's a very healthy kind of thing to do. And then if you are in touch with the body in that way, we carry a lot of tension in the body. You have an argument with someone you love, and you're gonna be carrying it in your body. Have an argument with someone you hate, you're gonna carry it even more in your body. Worry, or if you fall down and you have an accident somewhere in your body, it's going to be holding tension. And to have that practice of let the body be feeling, let it be sensation, and let that come out, is a very good practice. And that's really what I'm hoping we do with that. But it also centers you in the present moment. Okay, I think I won't answer all these questions. I shall cheat today, and I think I'll cash in my chips.